Hello, viewers. Good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of the Youth Roundtable. Well, today, unlike other days, we shall have a marathon or a plethora of conversations around three basic topics that have made headlines in the past couple of days or weeks. First of all, we know that the medical interns of Uganda have now gone into their third day of strike. So we shall explore that conversation and much more, knowing that this comes at a time when the country is grappling with the deadly Ebola virus. So how does this play into the whole national health crisis? Then the secondly is that we know that Parliament last week approved government to borrow 1.7 trillion Uganda shillings from Standard Bank. Well, for our debt burden and for the grappling economy, we shall explore what this means for us moving forward. Then lastly is that we know that there are new incidents that have arisen from the Democratic Republic of Congo crisis. We know that the M23 rebels seem to be, advancing much more so. But also there are some tweets that have come in from Uganda, and we shall, of course, be exploring those and what it means for our diplomatic ties in the region, but also in the globe at large. Once again, welcome to this episode of the Youth Roundtable, and I shall introduce to you our panelists, and in no particular order. Dr. Musa Lumumba, yes, who is the president of the Federation of Uganda Medical Interns. Doctor, many thanks for joining us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Thank you.
How do you feel being here?
Energizing, because I think this platform does expound on our concerns, gives us a space to share with the world how we are doing, so that everyone is involved, so that we can come up with a solution that is binding for everyone. So this is not only medical interns issue, but a national issue.
Oh, thank you. Next to Mr. Musa is Mr. Wangusa Hashim Otahunga, a student of education at Chambugu University. Many thanks for joining us, students.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The pleasure is mine.
Wow, thank you. Yes, then the last so far on the panel, we shall be joined by a lady slightly later on, is Mr. Isaac Otuku, who is a youth leader from Kwania district, but also he is a land surveyor and an environmental activist. Isaac, many thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, let's just dive straight to the point. Doctor, just give us the whole background. 2-3 days now into your strike. What is the background of this strike? What is forcing you guys to lay down your tools? Because I know that not so long ago, the interns had a strike, and I think some issues were rectified, or some pledges were made. I am not very sure. Perhaps you could clarify to our viewers. So just that background.
Okay, thank you so much, viewers. And once again, you might remember that colleagues have been striking over time and over basic things. This time we are striking over food, not being positioned to afford to eat in the morning, lunchtime, and supper, and not being in position to afford accommodation, because we know that in this country, most doctors, most interns are renting. So we have only about 26% of medical interns who are housed in the different regional and national hospitals. So the rest of us are renting. And that means we need to pay our rent every month. We need to pay our meals every day throughout the months. And now it is around 69 days we've not been paid. So we could not continue dying of hunger when we could come out and let Ugandans know our concerns. Why Uganda needs to know? Because we have had conversations with those who are responsible. Our bosses in Ministry of Health, we've been having conversations with them over time. Unfortunately, nothing is coming through. You might remember that last year in June, the president, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, did pledge to make sure that, actually he directed that let medical interns earn half of what their seniors get. So if a doctor is getting 5.4 million, then the medical intern who is doing the internship is supposed to get 2.7 of that. If a nurse, a graduate nurse or midwife is getting 4.4 right now, currently, actually starting with 1st of July, that's what they are getting, then the intern nurse or midwife is supposed to be getting 2.2. Unfortunately, these are now 5 months, July, August, September, October, November. 5 months, we are not getting that money. And also, it is 69 days that we've not been getting food, in terms of our allowances. Even those mega allowances that have been paid have delayed. There is no government agency currently in this country where its workers are demanding salaries. So if people have been in the system for some time, perhaps who have served here and there, have got businesses, are not demanding. What about people who have just finished medical school? Someone has finished medical school, someone has finished pharmacy school, someone has finished nursing school, midwifery school, has the only source of livelihood as that allowance that the government pays, and you're not paying them for now 69 days. That is totally unacceptable. We cannot continue. And as a president, I cannot continue letting my people die of hunger without doing anything. I've written letters. I can show you here the copy. I wrote this letter on the 2nd of November, copied it to wrote to the Minister of Health, copied it to the Speaker of Parliament, copied it to President, copied it to Minister of Finance. Now these from 2nd to today, which is 8th, those are 6 days, we have not had any conversation coming from Minister of Health inviting us for a meeting to say, okay, guys, this is how we can move forward. We have not had anything like that, but you can hear them talking to the press. And we are here dying of hunger and people are not calling us. But fortunately today, the chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Health, who is Honorable Dr. Ayume, has called us for a meeting at Parliament to see how Parliament can be of support into this process. So that is progressive.
Okay, thank you. Just Isaac, I want to bring you in right here. I'm sure you did intern at some point when you were pursuing your degree. Was government in any way, okay, were you interning at a government institution, one, but two, if it were private, were you expecting to be paid something? Or are these doctors asking for too much? Because they're interns, but are saying, yes, we are interns, yes, but we deserve to be paid. What was your internship experience?
I think, first to start off, good afternoon to the viewers. The issue of internship, if I'm to speak, I'll speak from my experience. When I was pursuing my undergraduate, we were expected to do internship, but our internship wasn't paid for, because it was you to look for where to do your placement. So, from that experience, it is not easy for me to judge issues of payment. Then, we need to look at two things here. The internship we do at undergraduate is not the same the medical students do after. For us, we do it to acquire the knowledge, which is an equivalent to what the medical students do from, I think, their 3rd year to 5th year, acquiring the knowledge, having the hands-on knowledge. Then, for the medical students, after the 5 years, basically you're done with the course, you are supposed to offer 1 year of, I can call it service, but is paid for by the government. Because you're offering service to the government. So, comparing the two will not be the same things, like compare two different scenarios. But if I'm to say something small about the strike, you see there's what we call adaptations. If you go back to our biology, you find that people easily adapt. Like Mr. President, you might find is coming from a region which is cold. That's why, like, there's what we call adaptation. The body adapts to somewhat situation. We are in a country ripe of adapted to strikes. It is strikes which have to work. Anything, negotiations don't work anymore. We are used that for anything to bear fruits, we must first strike. And I think that is where the problem is coming from. We have not reached that point where we can call the medical interns prior to the strike begins. We first want a strike should first happen. We pull ropes, then now a solution is got. So, for our situation as a country, I think we need to first go back to the round table and start seeing where we started getting off the road. Yes.
Well, thank you. Mr. Wangusa, let me just come to you. 69 days of delayed payment, but also, food and issues around housing. But I think delays can happen, or there are at times expected, So do you think that the interns are being too quick to lay down their tools? Should they give government some more ample time to maybe mobilize the resources? Because it's only 69 days. That is less than 3 months. I think payments have delayed, I think, in so many instances. So do you agree with them saying that we are laying down our tools? 69 days into the delay?
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kidega. But then, if you're looking at 69 days of laying down tools, that simply means there are very many lives that have been put
No,
to
69 days of delayed payment.
Oh,
The
sorry.
tools have been laid down for now 2-3 days, I think. Yeah.
69 days of delayed payment, of course. When you look at the medical interns, this is something, everything they're doing by the way is, of course, constitutionally protected, and they are mandated by that. So now, if you look at 69 days of delayed payment, surely, I think they are very okay to go on with their strike. Now, the only reason as to why I would maybe say that they are right to go on with their strike, we are in a country where we've been corrupted to think that, or to believe that the state or the government, those are the implementers, only understand one language, that is of strike. Not until you've striked, then almost your efforts shall be deemed maybe unnecessary, or shall be deemed effortless, as you're trying to do just right, maybe on top of water. But then still, there are very many issues that come along with the medical interns. Of course, having gotten to understand that in the 1995 Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, maybe specified to be specific, Article 30 provides for education. That is the right, every citizen has the right to education. But then Objective 14 provides that the state shall endeavor to fulfill the fundamental rights of all Ugandans to social justice and economic development. And of course, shall in particular ensure that all Ugandans enjoy the rights and opportunities in regards to accessing equal opportunities. But then in ensuring access to education, there is also Objective 18, which provides that the state shall appropriate measures to afford every Ugandan citizen equal opportunity to attain the highest education standard. Now, when we are looking at the medical interns, of course, they have got that policy is there. And then the government is always supposed to be in position to fund them. Not only funding maybe the other medics that they are going, the senior medics that are going to be helping them in their internship, but also to fund their welfare. Now, at a time where the welfare, take it, the housing, the renting, everything, and of course, no lunch, no everything. That simply means you're not going to have an empty stomach go and work on a patient, maybe a dying patient, when they are out of their senses, or when they are not functioning very well. So to me, it would be a valid reason for them to lay down truth, since that's the only language the government has proven to us that only understands that language.
Okay.
Maybe.
Just 1 second. Doctor, let me just come back to you. There are people who have had opinions or schools of thought and said that because the medical profession is puts the life of a human being at stake, and therefore you find it easy to blackmail government, because you know that when you lay down your tools, by all means the pressure will be raised either from the population or from somehow the pressure will be raised. That you only use these strikes to blackmail government and to strong arm government into meeting your demands. Because I think any other profession would have, I think, 2.5 months of delayed payment. I think many professions would have said, okay, no problem, let's wait and see. But because you feel that your profession is too important, then you blackmail government. Is that a fact?
Actually, to me, it is the other way around. Government finds it easy to blackmail us because we saw an oath to save patients' lives. And so we are not in any way supposed to do anything else apart from saving patients' lives. So it is easy for government to say, no, doctors, you're supposed to be there, and nurses, pharmacists, you're supposed to be there saving patients' lives. So we are put in a corner where we're like, okay, if we lay down our tools, Ugandans and the government will look at us as being bad people. You get? But the question here is, who can work without food? Who can work without eating a day, 2, 3 days? Who can do that? It's not that we are waking up one day and we're telling government we are laying down tools. No. Like I told you, it was 2021, 1st of June, when the president directed that we get half. Now, the new size structure that you might have seen, that scientists, doctors have had their allowances enhanced by government. That came into effect 1st of July. So look at July, August, September, October, and November. How many months are those? We've had discussions with government. I had a phone conversation with the permanent secretary, Minister of Health. She told me on 21st of October, Ministry of Finance had sent money. Prior to that, we had been told that Minister of Finance had not sent money. So we went on to Twitter. You can go and check my Twitter handle, underscore Musa, MUSAH. We went on Twitter asking Ministry of Finance to do send money. They did send money. I got a call from Permanent Secretary. I called her actually at around 8 in the morning. She told me, Musa, we had received your monies. Now we're asking from 21st of October to date, how many days are those? How come they've not paid our money? We've had this back and forth conversations until when we wrote to them. So we wrote to them on the 2nd of November. Have you seen any letter from them? Have you seen them call us? Today, Parliament has called. Parliament, which is another arm of government, legislature. But the executive has not called us. So who is blackmailing who?
Because in your letter, I have an issue, for example, with the wording. Because you describe 1.5 as mere 1.5. In the economy of today, someone who is earning even 1 million is very grateful. In your letter, you refer to 1.5 million as mere 1.5. Isn't that you?
In regards to
isn't
what we
that
need to
you having overreaching
entitlement? In regards to the prevailing conditions. In Kampala here, for example, we have Kawempe, you have Chirudo National Hospital, you have Mulago, you have Women's Hospital. Ask yourself, if a doctor is supposed to be on duty 24 hours, yeah, where will they have accommodation from? In Kampala. It means they will have to rent around Kawempe, rent around Chirudu, rent around Mulago. How much does a decent house, one room, let us take it as one room, because maybe 10 doctors are not supposed to have a room and maybe a bedroom, maybe a sitting room, but let us look at one room which is self-contained. How much does it go for? Around 400,000 in Kampala here. Now 400,000, how much do you expect a doctor or a medical intern or any other person to spend on meals a day? How much is lunch, for example? How much is supper? So you find that if, for example, at a minimum using 20 times 30 days, how much is that? 600. 600 plus 400, that's how much is that?
1 million.
That is 1 million. So you see, all the 1 million has gone up. So you have 500,000. You have to survive. You have to buy water. You have to buy a stethoscope. You know what you call a stethoscope? This machine that we use to listen. Government doesn't provide that to us. We buy our own. Do you know how much it costs for? The something that you can use, the one that you can use, at least to be like, I've been positioned to listen to your heart very well. I've appreciated how the heart is doing. It's around 500,000. The blood pressure machine. Do you know how much it costs?
But wait, you're working for a government institution.
Yes.
You then have to procure these.
We are the ones who are supposed to make sure that we have those.
But those are private, right? Those are personal.
But we are working on the patient.
Because it is like saying that because I am a government lawyer, then government should buy me a suit. You need the suit to go to court. I mean, there are things that, if they are personal, then you should be able to go the extra mile to procure them on your own.
We are talking about equipments we use in diagnosis of patients. You get it? So, like I've told you, an equipment that can at least help me as a doctor, at my level as a doctor, to see what is happening, which is a stethoscope. A minimum that can go for is 400,000. But you can as well get one of 10,000. You can get it. But 10,000 is not going to give me what the other one can give. So what do you want for your patient? As a doctor, what you want for your patient is quality service. You get it? So you need to use whatever you have to give the quality service. Even when we are moving from, because at the end of the day, we do night and day duties. You get it? Night duty means what? That you're supposed to work throughout the night. And many times you work night. For example, where I have been working, you go to hospital at 8, you work up till 5. At 5, you don't go home. You're supposed to continue night duty. And after night duty, at 8 in the morning, you don't go home. You go again on the wards and discharge patients. Those are around 36 hours. Can you do that?
Okay. Isaac, let me just come back to you. The country is grappling with Ebola, a very deadly virus. Should these interns have perhaps waited to negotiate? Or they are actually doing it strategically? At a point when the country needs them the most, they're saying, no, we are now laying down our tools. Because the country is grappling with Ebola, COVID-19 is still lingering around, and they're saying we are putting down our tools. What a better time to negotiate? Do you think they're also being driven by certain motives that are not perhaps being openly put out?
You see, Comrade Moses, I wanted to first get some answers from the president of the intern medical students. prior to the increment, how much were the interns earning, and what has been the mode of payment? Because from the little information I have, the payment has been on quarterly based system. With quarterly based, that means you are paid every 3 months, right? I hope I'm not telling lies.
Maybe you can pose your question and come in and answer.
How has been the payment system? Has it been monthly or quarterly? And how much have they been earning prior to the increment?
Yeah, perhaps you could first respond to those two.
I'll first need to clarify that medical interns are not students. No, these are professionals, just like you said in the beginning.
Let's say medical doctor, intern doctors.
Yes, intern doctors, intern nurses, intern pharmacists, intern dental surgeons. These are people who have graduated from their schools. They have their degrees already. They've done the so-called internship, what the arts people do, the internship. For us to call it placement. We have already done that. So right now, we are doing 12 months of supervision to see if indeed you have the necessary knowledge and skills to go and serve patients when we are independently serving them. So we get provisional license from the respective councils. So after the 12 months, you get now full license. You get it. So these are not students. They're all students. Medical students are no. The medical students are medical schools. For us, our graduates who are serving patients. And actually, if you went to hospitals, the first doctor, or maybe the only doctor, if your condition is not so severe, maybe so complicated, the only doctor that is going to serve you is the medical intern. That's why you saw that in Movende, the people who were first affected by COVID-19, by Ebola, were the intern doctors. That the people who got infected. Why? They were on the front line serving patients, helping a patient who presented with bleeding in the theater. So they thought actually maybe one of the intestines had gotten perforated. So they went in. Did you hear that the consultant was also in theater? No, these were medical interns. So a medical intern is a doctor or is a nurse who can do ably, but now under supervision. You get it? So the question is, the process has been that we are paid quarterly. That monies are sent, for example, in the middle of the second month when you're working, and you get those monies. And so it's up to you to plan for your monies. But however, that is not in any way in line with government work. You know that government workers earn monthly. But also, even if we were earning quarterly, because we have been earning quarterly, the month of September is in the other quarter, in the previous quarter. The unfortunate bit is that we get money, our monies are sent together with those who are doing masters, what we call senior house officers. The senior house officers, their money for September was set in the last quarter. So they got their 3 months together. Now for medical interns, I don't know for what reason, for us we got only 2 months in the last quarter. You get it? So that raises very many questions.
No, but you see, Doctor,
I have an issue. Yet, Ministry of Finance says all the monies were sent.
Doctor, I have an issue. So meaning literally, with the way you've explained it, you're only 1 month short.
No.
Because in the previous quarter, you are not paid the month of September. But in this quarter that begins in October, November, December, you are waiting payment for this quarter. Is that right? And government is yet to release money to MDAs, ministries, departments, and
this is what I'm saying.
agencies.
That the Ministry of Finance says to release the monies. Even today, the Permanent Secretary has been on UBC. Today morning, you'll see a clip I'll share with you. He says monies were sent. You get it? Even on 21st of October, the Permanent Secretary told you, who had a conversation, said monies were received.
Isaac, has he answered your question?
He has answered one, and another one was prior to the increment.
Yes.
How much were the medical interns? And I don't want to be caught off guard again. The medical interns, how much were they receiving?
So prior to the presidential directive, they were earning 700,000. You get it? Now the president was in the process to enhance salaries for scientists and doctors, remember. And then he directed that let medical interns get half of what their immediate seniors get. So in the new salary structure, which came into effect 1st of July this year, a medical officer, now the senior one, a medical officer gets 5.4. A graduate nurse or midwife gets 4.4. You get, which was supposed to be 4.8, but they ended with 4.4. So an intern is supposed to get half of 5.4, which is 2.7. And intern nurse or midwife is supposed to get 2.2. But from July to date, that discrepancy has not been, and yet Minister of Finance says has been sending money and been saying we've been getting less of that.
So I want to first understand this discrepancy. How much is the difference? How much are they sending vis-a-vis what you're supposed to have gotten?
So, for example, a midwife, an intern midwife or nurse, has been getting after taxes 1.5. They've been sending 1.5, but actually they've been getting after taxes 1 million, 1.05, which is 1,050,000. Yet the president directed, and the Minister of Finance says they've been sending monies of 2.2. Now, an intern doctor, an intern pharmacist has been getting 2 million before taxes, yet the directive is they are supposed to get 2.7. So our question is, those other monies that are supposed to add up, where are they going?
Good question. Yes, Isaac, he had posed a very good concern, but I believe you are trying to make your point, and I'll just give you 2 minutes to make it before I can wrap it up with him, because he has to leave us.
So the point I was trying to make is, whenever you have situations, okay, like if you are to even to pause back, currently we are in a situation where the entire global economy is in what we call a recession. There is no part of the country where we can say there is plenty of money. Today there are midterms elections in USA, and the biggest thing which is going to be a determinant is the cost of living. Recently there was massive strikes in France, all because of the cost of living had gone up. Same thing in Czech Republic. Like in the EU, there are a lot of kind of strikes going on. So why I posed that question is, for the medical interns, when you are faced with some situations, you have to also to be fair. You first weigh yourself that, okay, before I take this action, am I being fair? Because you have to give room for fairness, such that even if you have to be judged, you say, okay, we try to be as fair as possible. From the president himself, he says they have been paid for 2 months in the previous quarter. And they are demanding this current full quarter and the previous quarter.
And
1 month of the previous quarter. And I would expect that to some extent, before they had laid down their tools, because this were at the point where they are needed the most, they would have at least given room for negotiations, because you are demanding basically 1 month. This quarter isn't done yet. And I can tell you from the information I have, very many government entities haven't even cleared some of the previous month's salary. I have colleagues who are working in government, but all of them are saying, you know what, we haven't received October salary yet. You have seen government saying, even government has gone ahead to borrow, and some of that money is maybe and be used for the recurrent expenses like the salaries. So somehow, I would request if the medical interns would first give room for dialogue before you lay down tools, because basically 1 month, with the economy we are in, everyone is doing badly off. And also, the president made a directive for scientists for science enhancement of salaries for scientists. But the problem I have with our country, the directive has become a law, where a president will say, salaries have increased your salary to 15 million and it will pass. But I would think the salary review structure should be put in such that there should be a formal way how salaries are what? Are enhanced. Not just the president wakes up in his good mood. He says, for the medical interns, you're going to receive this amount of money, irrespective of whether the money is there or the money is not there.
Okay. Doctor, I know that you have to leave us, so I'll just give you just 3 minutes to just wrap it up for us. Your own words, how best do you think you can move forward with this, but also, do you agree that you are partly being too hard on government?
Thank you so much. I think It's the other way around. You know, when you're a doctor, when you're a nurse, when you're a pharmacist, it's very easy for you to be targeted, to be put into a corner because of the oath that you did swear or you did take. In circumstances like these, when our 1 month was not paid in the previous quarter, we didn't go on the streets. We didn't come out to the media because we knew what was happening in government. Even Minister of Finance came out and shared with us how they're having challenges. But after that, you might have seen the Permanent Secretary Minister of Finance tell the world that right now everything is okay. All those challenges they had been rectified. Now, when you write a letter like this one, what do you expect? You expect that those who have got the power to address your concerns actually call you and in a room and you discuss on table and you agree on timelines. Right now we don't have the monies, but we are looking forward to paying these discrepancies within this, and you agree on the different milestones. This has not been done. Starting with July, August, September, October, November. Now these are 5 months. We didn't go on strike in January. I mean in July. Nor did we go on strike in August. Why? We gave room for negotiations. Even writing this letter, we didn't just wake up and say, now we are striking. No, we said, we are giving you a chance to call us. Because we had these conversations on call, on WhatsApp, going to meetings, but now we wanted something that is formal, that we can hold on to and say, we agreed that even when you're not doing well as a country, we agreed that in this time, you'll be in position to pay areas. You've seen civil servants being paid areas. You've seen that. But it comes from a point of negotiating and agreeing. What we are asking right now is, can we have this discussion take place? Formal discussion. Not them being on TV and saying, we're asking them politely to go back. No, we are here. Our phones, our communication channels are open. We are willing to discuss with government. But we are not going to be put into a corner for people to think, because we are doctors. No. Actually, it is the other way around. They are blackmailing us. No one can survive for 69 days without food. No one. And there is a reason as to why government workers are paid monthly, not quarterly. Because monies are released in a quarter to pay every month. Why do you hold on to the monies and you say, okay, you will first work for 3 months? Why? And yet others are being paid. Like I told you, senior house officers, those who are doing masters, they were paid their money. In wholesome, how come ours was held? And how come the health sector is only medical interns? Ask yourself that question. Why is that? It is the medical interns' money within the wages for the health sector that were withheld, or that are not enough. It means they first handle others who are big, and they leave us the smaller ones.
One last question. Should government not succumb to the pressure? Are you going to continue to lay down your tools when Ugandans are dying day in, day out of Ebola?
Government has the key to either lock or close.
Assuming they don't succumb to the pressure and say we don't have money, because government is borrowing.
This is what I'm saying.
So that shows that the national coffers are in fact running dry. Should they not succumb to your pressure? Are you going to continue to lay down your tools and allow
They
Ugandans?
have the key to either open or close. If the Permanent Secretary Minister of Finance says monies were released, do you again come out and believe the fact that the government doesn't have money when Minister of Finance is telling you your monies were released for that quarter?
Okay.
So who is lying?
Okay, should whatever is happening in the background, should your money not come? Whatever is happening, whether it was paid or not,
we shall give chance.
Are you going to lay down your tools and allow?
We shall give chance to government to call on us and share with us how we are going to address this. And in the meantime, we shall continue serving Ugandans in emergency departments because we don't want Ugandans to die. So emergency services will continue until when we are able to eat, to go and serve very many.
So for now, you will work in the emergency situations?
Yes. Because we don't want Ugandans to die.
I have a question.
Just
one question.
One last question. He has to give us.
To the president. Just one question to the president. Is the strike about the discrepancy in the figures, or is the total amount which has not come?
So even the smaller monies they are supposed to pay, they have not paid it.
So the strike, is it about that difference? Because from what I've understood, there's a difference between what they are supposed to get and what they are getting, which has not been coming, and what they are getting. So is a strike Because of that
The strike
difference,
is about
of-
survival, not being positioned to eat for the last 69 days. And the reason strike is not being paid is because even the little that they've been paid has not come. But we are asking also, let this be the chance for them to rectify the discrepancies in pay. You get it? So at first, you cannot negotiate with someone who has not eaten. You cannot. Give them food. Then be like, okay, you also wanted a house. Now I'm going to build for you a house next year. Right now, we're not asking for anything like that. We're asking, let us be in position to eat. If they send money for food to the different hospitals where we are, we can go and work because we know at the end of duty, we are going to eat. But right now, there's no food. Even the small monies they've been paying, they're not paying.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I have
It is a struggle of survival.
Yes.
And survival for the fittest. Doctor,
Struggle
thank you for
food.
sparing time to be on the show.
Yes.
We shall allow you to take your leave.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Dr. Musa has left us, but we have been joined by another doctor, but this time a doctor in the law. Trassyleen Ankunda is a student of law at Makerere University. Lynn, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
All right.
How do you feel?
I feel good to be part of this great panel and, of course, talk about issues of national importance.
Yeah, sure. Well, just to allow you to settle in, let me go to Mr. Wangusa. Wangusa, the whole issue of medical strikes, I don't know. What would be the long-lasting solution to this? Because even last year, the medical interns went on strike. This year again, another strike. Next year, perhaps we could see the same thing. What could be the long-lasting solution to this?
All right, thank you very much once again. But then before we go to getting maybe the long-lasting solution, I think as Ugandans, we have got maybe a responsibility to understand the difference between maybe a political promise and a presidential practice. When it is a political promise, that is personal and can be owned by a person. But then when it is a presidential practice, that simply means it is over an office bearer. Therefore, there are some other institutions that have to come into play. Like you were saying, of course, presidential directives, we respect them as being the directives of the fountain of honor of the country. But then at a time where they just come in without any censoring there, then there is a problem that it is putting to the other institution, which is supposed to be maybe reviewing the salary structure. It is putting it at maybe at stake, and at a certain time, that's why they are failing to pay. Even when you have maybe 3.58 trillion budget allocated, 5 trillion allocated to the Ministry of Health, and of course, where we are seeing that 1.03 trillion goes in for wage payment, and of course, 928.4 billion are going for the non-wage recurrent. But we are still facing these challenges. At a time where we have 928.4 billion going for non-wage recurrent, that means it's just operation and funding, running costs. Now, when these medical interns are coming in, first and foremost, of course, was calling himself a government official. They are calling themselves government workers. But at a time where they are not yet licensed, because the only reason that's why they have to have this 1 year intern, even after their medical profession, is for them to be licensed to work independently. So that simply means if you have not yet been licensed to work independently, you're not yet a government worker. So they must be important to adhere maybe to the terms and conditions that if you're not yet, if you may be on a medical intern, if you're being paid quarterly, they must respect the policy that is there, not comparing their policy with the policy of the older government workers. That simply means even lawyers who have just graduated in their profession 4 years, even when they cannot go, even when they have not yet gone in maybe for 1 year postgraduate diploma in legal practice, because I'm very much sure that they cannot stand in as right in courts of law. That simply means they're also going to go on strike, that we also need maybe something to be paid, because at the end of the day, these people are just getting these remunerations because of maybe the input they put in. But then if we are to solve this situation or this crisis, we need to be fair to ourselves as a nation. If we may be oppressed in certain institutions, what have we got to do? Are we going to sign memorandum of understanding every now and then? Or are we going to, because if you are going into the institutions or maybe to work hand in hand with the institutions, look at the institution of maybe like Ministry of Finance. What is its role? What is it doing? Has the budget come? Or has the budget been approved? How much has been allocated maybe to the most pressing, maybe to the most required sector? Of course, all of us need a livelihood. We would ask them, they are striking for survival. But is there any maybe statistic of any medical intern who has died because of hunger? So at a time where they are not there, even when the economy is pressing, or at the time where you have not heard of any case, if they were there maybe to take it at that ground, still we believe that their best means of survival even when they come in. So that's when we go in for fairness, and then we negotiate diplomatically. That at the time we can negotiate, and these maybe remunerations are going to come in, and therefore they will counteract maybe the extra expenses we had to incur on just on a personal basis, where we expect it at some time. So maybe what that simply means, or to wrap up, the solution I would provide to get done with this is to have a clear laid structure of how best they are going to be paid. But then when it comes back to the action plan, who is going to implement it? Of course, there are miscellaneous in each and everything. So at a time where maybe the economy has been pressed, nobody anticipated this. But then it is into play. So what does it call for? It calls for the human bit of it. How considerate are you to other factors, or how considerate are you to the available circumstances? Because at the end of the day, everything is going to be dictated by the resources and the time available.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Lynn, let me just come to you and to, of course, introduce you to this topic. In 2013, African nations convened in Abuja and passed the famous Abuja Declaration, which meant that 15% of the national state's budget must go to funding the health sector. Uganda's budget, if you look at the past 2-3 financial years, we haven't gone beyond 6% funding to the health sector. So are we looking at symptoms and not addressing the root cause of this challenge, that we have failed to fast track some of these very good resolutions, that if we were funding indeed our health sector by 15%, perhaps we would not be having such issues? So do you think that some of these laws or some of these declarations that we are a part of, we should fast track them, first address some of these challenges?
First of all, I think with the issue of the medical doctors or interns, it gets back to the education level. Realize that once you're in schools, the payment people doing sciences usually is higher compared to someone who is maybe doing maybe social sciences, or maybe something like psychology or anything in the arts field. So that alone puts a setting in the mind of individuals that because I'm paying this as my tuition, I should be able to earn more than this. I should not be able to earn less, or maybe earn like someone who did social sciences. And that has stuck in the minds of very many people. If I do engineering, I do not expect to earn small money. And that has been so much to us as society, where you find that, yes, I'm done with school, maybe you're an intern, like the Federation of Uganda Medical Interns, the same strike that happened last year in December is back. And I feel that there is more to the practical, to the practical part that was not done then. Because if it was done, this is not a government way alone, it is a two-way to come up with a solution. If those doctors maybe had said now, they should also themselves have a long-lasting solution. If by then they said maybe, you see, this is happening like this, so this is what we need to do right now. And usually when we are coming up with solutions, we focus on the short term and forget the long term. If I may say that maybe in December, after they are striking and saying, we are putting down our tools, we are not getting enough, or maybe we are not getting paid, and then the same consistently comes up in this year, it means that it's likely that even the same can actually come up the next year. So this is something that needs a round-table negotiation with both the interns or their leaders and both the government, and with connection with the Ministry of Health. Because doctor left and he said that the Ministry of Finance says the money is there. So we cannot partly say that maybe the ministry is not doing its part. The money is there, but where is the problem? Why aren't they receiving their money if it is actually there? Like he said, who is lying who? If money is there, then I think the necessary steps, maybe in the structure of the transfer of money, there is still some loophole that they have not discovered, which should be done as soon as immediately, because you realize that even them as doctors, even them, they need to live, just like we are. But then also this brings us to attention that I believe that most of the Ugandans are entrepreneurs. And in this society, it is very rare to find someone is doing medicine or is doing this alone. They usually have those part-time businesses. So I feel it is an eye-opener to us all that you should not necessarily say because you are a lawyer, your survivor should only be on court or should only be, what if something happens? You need to give that room for, if the patients, you need to put that room for, if this happens, then I could be working on this, or I could earn survival from this and that, as you wait, but then also as you speak up and find very available and resourceful remedies towards the cause.
Wow,
Yes.
brilliant submission. Isaac, just as we wrap up the whole intern conversation and shift gears to something else, let's just find your lasting words. How best would you advise both the interns and government to maneuver through this situation? So Isaac, Wangusa, then Lynn.
Right.
First and foremost, I would advise that all parties should come to the table of discussion with clean hands, where they are willing to discuss honestly. You see, one thing medical interns and the government need to understand is the budgeting process. At what time is money appropriate for something, and what time, because you have heard of things like supplementary budgets. By the time you hear supplementary budget, that means there was a deficiency somewhere. But here we are in a situation where government is going to borrow. We don't know what they're borrowing for, but my solution would be to the medical interns, before you put down, you lay down your tools, first think about that patient who needs you so much, who is at the point of death, who needs that maybe some diagnosis you're going to do, and you'll save that life. And also to the government, get a lasting solution. Let us move away from issues of directives. Let us start following procedures on how to discuss matters of the finance. Issues of finance, and we shall not continue discussing it like we are having these talks where we always have like border talk, where someone wakes up and says, I've given you this, I've increased this. Let the government come up with a clear strategy. This will not apply only to medical interns, because after medical interns, we are going to hear another set of people striking. Just recently, we had strikes of arts teachers. By the art teachers who say they are getting 700,000 per month as of now, and they want to increase, but they failed to increase it. So they should get a clear strategy how salaries can be increased, such that even the medical student who is in his third year right now, he will know by the time maybe I'm reaching my time for internship, this is what I expect to get. Not reaching midway, then things start changing. Let us have a clear strategy how these things can be handled, how salaries will be enhanced. I think that would be more sustainable for the country itself also.
Yes, Wangusa. How can the two parties go about this?
All right. For the two parties, that's the medical interns and then the government. Of course, everybody has got to know their mandate or their responsibility. At a time where you have a responsibility of saving lives and you having taken that oath, we expect you to live by it. But then, like my sister said, general knowledge should have dictated, like since we are post-COVID, all of us got at least learn from it that you cannot survive only on your profession. Some of us have a belief that your talent is the best means of survival compared to your profession. So they not only need to stick to one income generating maybe source, but also look for other sources of income. Though the profession that it takes a lot of their time, but we believe they can start up other projects. We are not saying that we are encouraging government not take up the amount or to pay, but all we are saying is government should also take it into consideration. Yes, the president is constitutionally protected to have or to declare all those presidential directives. But at what time, at what point are those presidential directives supposed to take shape or take effect? Or what kind of presidential directives are supposed to come into play even against the legislature? There are some presidential directives that need to seek for ratification from the legislature. So at a time where we have a presidential directive against maybe the legislature mandate or maybe the executive mandate, then there's a problem there. At least they would now come back on the table, know that if there's any presidential directive, irrespective of the medical interns having maybe evidence or thinking that or making us believe that that's the new science structure, I mean the new scientist salary structure was accommodating the presidential directive, we also need to know if it was just taken, maybe made out of maybe his good modes. Did he consider, or did his advisors consider how much the budget is? Because even looking at the 3.58 trillion budget allocated the health sector, 1.358 is supposed to be gotten from the external funding. That simply means it is not from within us. So at a time even where the budget that is already existent is getting a lot of funds from, because it is almost a half, almost 50% from external funding, then that simply puts us at a risk of just taking a decision anyhow. So we just need to come back to the table, take on that responsibility, and see how best we can liaise with them, whereas they also need to take keen interest into executing their mandate. So all of us need to play our roles excellently, not perfect, because none of us can ever be perfect, just excellently, and then sure enough, we shall be there.
Yes, Lynn.
Okay, I see we are battling with two scenarios. We have the presidential directive, versus procedure, and we have the presidential directive versus procedure and versus what the intern doctors actually want. So, which route are they taking? Are they taking the presidential directive? Are they taking procedure? Or are they taking their own opinions on how they want something to be done? You realize that most of us Ugandans, usually we do not follow procedure. We feel that if the president says this, then that should be it. And which sometimes is not right in terms of procedure. Because, for example, with the medicine and health sector, this is a very key area that you cannot just wrap up and rush here and there. Otherwise, you'll find maybe the money used to pay you, that is supposed to pay for you, is this maybe at the moment is the same money they're using to buy drugs. And so, are you going to say they should pay you and then hospitals do not have drugs? What are you going to use to help all the patients out there? So I feel, and that would be your opinion. Your opinion would be you want to be paid. But what is the procedure and what is the presidential directive? I feel like there is need to harmonize the three, your opinion to suit into the procedure and likewise to suit into the presidential directive, and work hand in hand. Do not feel like maybe because you need this, that must be it. If there is a need to, be a bit flexible, then do it. As long as both terms can come to negotiation and to a common stand.
Well, thank you. I think just to wrap it up, to me it is the principle of equity, that he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. I think the two parties must negotiate, but to do so fairly, they must come with clean hands to the table. Well, I think that just wraps it up for the first segment of this conversation. Let's just shift gears and still discussing money, because there is consensus, at least from your submissions, that the principal issue goes back to whether there is money or whether there is no money in the coffers of the country. And Wangusa, I'll just begin with you. You were very brilliant with citing out the figures, But also there's a figure I know, which is that Uganda's debt burden as of 2021 was around 19 trillion US dollars. Last week, Parliament approved that we should borrow another 1.7 trillion from Ugandan Charter. What does this mean for our economy, first of all? I will ask the question of procedure to her, whether the procedure of approving this role or this loan was in fact followed. But to you, let's just examine the implication. What does this mean for our economy? Because we know that already we have a domestic burden. Yeah, our government already borrows domestically, so they have a domestic debt burden. But now, adding on to this is an international budget. International debt burden. So, just to examine this, what does this mean for our economy?
Well, of course, you cannot talk about issues of the economy and then you put the government or the state of such a country outside the discussion. Whereas every government would come into maybe a position of leadership, they must have a political agenda and well-defined, and especially towards to all maybe domains, socially, economically, and of course politically. Now, when you look at the economy, having that debt burden, the international one, 19 trillion, and of course you also have as very many debts as you could think of, and having also approved, the same parliament approved 1.1 trillion supplementary budget of a few months ago, and that is again having approved the 1.7 trillion to borrow. It takes us back to the question of what is the political agenda towards the fiscal policy of the country. Are you just going to keep borrowing and then just consuming, or we must be in position? Because in my own understanding or my own belief, I would be okay with borrowing if we are borrowing and then we use that that loan to pay the same loan that we borrowed. But then at the time where you're just borrowing to increase your debt burden, then we are surely taking the wrong direction. So this simply shows that our financial muscle towards maybe independence of the economy is not yet as strong as it would be. But then we'd also look into how are they borrowing? Are they just borrowing for the sake, or for what purpose are they borrowing? A few years ago, even when we had Ebola, maybe in the northern areas, those days before maybe we introduced the idea of COVID, and because I'm very much cognizant that it's COVID that introduced this idea of lockdown, they would even fight as a country Ebola without putting down a lockdown. But now at a time where, because of recent, I read in some newspapers, I think it was New Vision, I cannot remember the date very well, but then you had received medicine, Ebola vaccines from the US. Now, where did these vaccines go? And why should we even go on borrowing the 1.7 trillion, which is even more than the 1.1 supplementary budget? It really shows that Uganda as a country, we are still very weak when it comes to the financial muscle, and also maybe when it comes to controlling our economy. There's something we are not seeing, and there's something we are not paying attention to.
Lee,
Yes.
I know for sure that, and of course I'll speak to your legal mind, I know that we have an Appropriations Act in Uganda. We have a Public Finance Management Act and all these very good laws that should govern the appropriation and use of public resources and public funds, of course. So the question then is, because we have seen mainly from the opposition side, questions around the procedure, that did Parliament in fact follow the procedure in its black and white in approving and passing this particular loan request? So as a law student, do you think that the procedure in approving this loan by Parliament was passed in a constitutional manner? Because the MPs are vowed to in fact petition in the Constitutional Court, challenging the process through which the loan was passed. So do you think they will make headway in their pursuit for justice?
Okay, so first of all, I believe that, yes, like you said, Uganda, first of all, has had a lot of borrowing. And this is something that could have been beneficial, maybe in the short term or maybe in the long term. And you realize, just like they're saying that the medical interns are on strike, and there is need for example, if it is those medical interns, the issue is not only with them being paid. The issue is even people are dying before they arrive at those hospitals. And so mainly the reason that's why these people were doing the borrowing was to improve on infrastructure, which has usually been done in various regions of Uganda. And you realize that the infrastructure part of it is very pertinent, actually, even maybe than the hospitals, because people are not going to arrive at the hospitals without the good infrastructure. They could die along the way. And sometimes there are these, rush up conclusions, not in the sense that procedure is not being followed, but the fact that maybe it was brought to Parliament and Parliament discussed. Opposition always has a way they want to pull down and say no, because their role is to oppose. Anyway, they have to feel and say that, you see, this is not right, this is not right, this is wrong, this is wrong. Every time now and then. I like the fact that once you see something that is really upright and taking us somewhere, yours should not be to only oppose each and every time because you feel you belong to the opposition side. And in the say, if you are able to align with the former budgets that have been borrowed, where have they been going to? Is there a physical work that we can see? Maybe if we are to say Karuma Dam, or if we are to say Irumba Dam, if we are to say maybe mention something, if we are to say there are some irrigations that have been started up, and the president of Uganda is someone that has really geared up so much on the issue of electricity, hydroelectricity, and electricity is very we are even here because of electricity. If it wasn't there, we would not have a way of discussing such issues to the people outside there to know them. So I feel there is more that opposition still needs to do to bring up something that is really tangible than always complaining and saying this is not it, this is not it, this is not it, but without a way forward. They need to open up and, yes, we are all Ugandans in the long run and they are opposition, but there's some things that they should actually say. They're never appreciating anything. Theirs is to always say, this is not right, this is not right, this is not right. And yet they're not coming up with a solution. Maybe if they would say that, no, we're not borrowing this and that, but we can do this. And they take a step and show that, you see, this is working out. Other than lamenting on every procedure or lamenting on every idea that comes up as a way of helping us.
No, because you see, Lynn, they are not just lamenting. They are saying that government has been an abater in terms of us as a country not realizing domestic resource revenue. That we give so much tax incentives. There are companies in Uganda that have taken, I don't know how many years without paying taxes. And government is in fact responsible for paying the taxes that they should have paid to URA. So with all these tax incentives to foreign direct investors, how then do we expect to generate domestic resources and therefore mitigate foreign borrowing, both foreign and domestic borrowing? So perhaps they are right to castigate government, to say that you are not doing sufficiently enough to realize or to mobilize domestic resources because of reason A, B, C, D. The tax incentives, the tax holidays, but also how robust is the URA system to realize or to mobilize resources. So I think those are questions that fall on government entirely because they have the machinery.
Now, one of the things that there is a statement my friend usually says that it is not corruption if it is not corruption if it is in your favor. If it is in your favor. For example, if we are to start up with the parliament itself, let me generalize, let me not say opposition or ruling government or anything. What task have they played as them? Because you realize they are earning a lot of money, they are getting a lot of allowances, and that is part of the budget that goes to them. That is, and they're saying they need to castigate outside and show. Why don't they first lead by example and maybe say, you see, these allowances can be used maybe in hospital A and B and help out on this and that. But the fact that they want to play and assume that, you see, we are fighting for this, but they're not themselves taking action in that, brings us a worry as Ugandans. Is it really that they're fighting and saying this is not being done, or is it because they feel that is what they should actually do? If they themselves are benefiting in some of these budgets and not giving up and opening up and saying, you see, this is not it. Maybe we don't need this salary, it's a lot, or maybe this fuel and stuff. And that is part of, you as an individual playing a key role so that society can actually fit in your shoes and feel like, hey, you see, these guys are doing this. So I actually think if we are doing this, then the government should do that and that.
Thank you, Lynn. Isaac, let me just come to you, just to wrap it up before we take a short commercial break. I have read from Dambisa Moyo. Dambisa Moyo is, she's a renowned economic scholar, well trained by Oxford and Harvard. She has a very interesting book called Dead Aid. And at some point, she makes a very fundamental argument and says that should the IMF, for example, or World Bank say that from tomorrow we are not going to lend money anymore to African states, where would African countries begin from? That's the first question that she asks in her book, and I'll ask you the same question. 2, let's examine the implications of borrowing. Dambisa says that borrowing has in fact encouraged conflict in African countries. That because there is so much money that is unaccounted for. Therefore, everyone now fights to be part of the team controlling that money, which has no accountability model. So do you agree, Dan Samuel, that one, should IMF, World Bank, and all these foreign players stop giving us money, would we be stuck? Then two, how do you relate, because we are shifting into DRC now, where there is conflict. So I want you to just set the pace for us. But just to attach borrowing to conflict, is it true that the higher a country borrows, the more it is prone to conflict?
Actually,
Or those are just hypotheses and they're not right?
it may be someone's opinion.
Hmm.
Maybe it has been proven, because I'm sure by the time she made that statement, she had a basis where she was coming from. But allow me to take us back a bit. 1.7 trillion
Yes.
being borrowed. Personally, I'm a person who does not, I'm not against borrowing. As an individual, I'm not against borrowing. I'll give you a scenario. Let us say you have a shortfall. You want to construct, let us say currently what is catching is an apartment, of which you know this apartment, if you are to put it up, you are going to be generating a revenue of, let me say, like 10 million per month. And yet a shortfall of, say, like 300 million shillings. Would you stay there and let it be there, or you go and borrow, complete, generate the revenue, pay back the loan, and continue with your survival with generating the revenue? So borrowing itself, it's not a bad thing. Borrowing, when you're going to put it into something which is productive, which can generate the income and help you pay back the loan, that could be a tick. Now, the problem we have is that in our country, Uganda, they'll go and borrow 1.7 trillion, but most of this money is going into recurrent expenses. If they are borrowing for developmental expenditure, where you know you invest in to boost the economy, and so you can generate the money and pay, that would be a good tick for the government. But the challenge we have is most of the loans we have borrowed, we borrow and put it just into this recurrent expense, salaries, allowances, maybe some small compensations, before you realize the money is gone. But last week alone, our tax collector, URA, posted they have exceeded the quarterly target. That was from URA. It was in the national newspaper. They collected 5.7 trillion, which I would think, if they're collecting that amount of money per quarter, if it is 5.7, and they're saying they exceeded the target, what could that be mean? What could that mean? Basically, that the money can be generated from the economy, yes, but also now, why are we borrowing? Why we are borrowing goes back to our budget. We have a budget of 47 trillion, of which from the 47 trillion, I think 20 was to be collected domestically, then the rest was to be borrowed. So maybe you may find that the borrowing is to cater for the other what? The other balance, which domestic collections cannot cover for. So about the borrowing and parliament, that one I will not go into it, so about the procedure bit, because that's a matter of the law, which the law can take can take its course there. Now, you asked a very interesting question. What would happen if IMF and World Bank says we're not giving money to African countries, right? I would think, personally, I'm a personal advocate for no aid. I'm a person who believes that if the country as Uganda, African countries would manage their outflows of income, the money we have, and we work within our means, we can push our economy as Africa to even a very, very far, like to bigger strides than it is right now. World Bank and IMF will give you a loan. Let me just give you a scenario. There's a loan which was given like for, I think that was not for World Bank, but it is Exim for Karuma. They give you a loan. The workers, okay, the project, to do a project, that same project should be done by the person giving you the loan. The workers have to come from that same country giving you the loan. The materials they'll specify for doing the work will be imported from that country. Basically, their living is the good, but the money is going back to the what? To the economy. So if we as African countries, we could work within our budgets, the monies we have, we invest it into our own economy, boost it, we would not even need IMF to give us their loans. Although, to play the devil's advocate, as of now, we don't have the money. And when you don't have the money, you will be forced to borrow.
Sure. Well, thank you. That takes us for a short commercial break, but just stay with us. We know that you have an opinion. There is a comment section right below this channel. Give us your comments. If you agree with any of us or disagree, please let us know. But above all, see you shortly after this commercial break.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Wow, we'll be back on that short commercial break. Wangusa, let me just come back to you. There is a very interesting comment that was made by an officer from the central bank, that is Bank of Uganda. He said that the only way through which Uganda can overcome its debt, he gave 3 options. He said 1 is if we are forgiven. That the person who later says, because you failed to pay, we are forgiven you. The second is that if Uganda just chooses to disrespect and say, okay, to defy and say we will not pay. But the third option, which I want us to examine with you, is that he said that unless we can get our oil out of the ground and begin to refine it, begin to make money out of it, then we can perhaps overcome our debt burden. Do you associate yourself with this opinion? But also, are you for ECOP or are you against ECOP? Because it seems to be right now Uganda's biggest economic silver bullet. That we are discussing borrowing and the interns and all that, but should the oil get out, then some of these questions could be answered for good. Do you agree that?
All right. Maybe before I agree with this official from Central Bank, well, those 3 solutions he gives, of course, all of them have both negative and positive effects or impacts at the end of that day. Because if you looked at the debt burden that we have, which says maybe each and every Ugandan right now, it has used 1 million, 1 point something million for each and every person or for each and every citizen. That simply means out of the 40 plus million Ugandans, we have a long way to go. Looking maybe taking us back like to the 2014 population census statistics, where they were saying that 33% of the Ugandans are below the international poverty line. That simply means if 33% of Ugandans cannot earn $1 a day, then how long will it take such a Ugandan or such a citizen to pay or to foot this 1 million to overcome that debt? And that simply means it is either they forgive us or else we shall have to
refuse to pay.
It is very difficult to defy for only one simple reason, maybe in my opinion, that these loans come along with strings attached most of the times, if not all the times with strings attached. So if these strings attached, maybe if you're to defy,
They can attach your airport.
yeah, they are going to take each and everything, maybe all the resources that we have. Even when you're to go back, maybe behind the curtains, what is in this whole airport thing, there must be attached strings of the loan or the burden that we have. Now, if he's saying maybe if we extracted our own oil, of course is a great factor when we are looking maybe like factors of production. I mean prices and everything. They would always tell you the cost of fuel at the end of the day. So that simply means if maybe had our own oil refineries and we're having our own oil, the prices would go low. And at a time where prices are low, then that simply means the standards of living maybe can be improved. And when they are improved, we also believe that perhaps we shall be good to go. The production cost shall also reduce. But then how long will it take? I would also have a question for this official. At a time where if it's certain that maybe if you extracted our own oil, then the dead body would surely deal away with it, then would come back into play. How best can we have it extracted? Do we have all the required resources to extract it? We have, I think, one institute, that is Uganda Petroleum Institute, Chigumba, where most of our Ugandans, though there are a handful of them, go specifically trained in such things. But do not be taken by surprise when sometimes they tell that some of the students there do their interns from outside Uganda, because we lack oil refineries in this country. So that simply means if we are extracting it by ourselves, of which we don't have that mandate, we will go into the requisites of how best to extract it, then to also be maybe incurring some dependence burden.
That is why we are partnering with Total, we are partnering with Sinok to get the oil out of the ground.
Yeah, and at the time where you're signing that moment of understanding to partner with these partner institutions, then there is another expenditure you're incurring, shares. So are we taking the lion's share, or we are not taking the lion's share, irrespective of us having the resource? That would be a key question into how best, even when we extract our own oil, irrespective of maybe the pressure that would be into play, these partner institutions, how much are we benefiting? So if the benefit we are getting can easily maybe deal with the loan, then we'll be good to go.
Okay, thank you. Lynn,
Yes.
in the late 1980s, Uganda and many African states took up the structural adjustment programs, under which came principles that encouraged borrowing, encouraged public-private partnerships, encouraged foreign direct investments.
Yes.
But let's examine the encouragement of borrowing. Do you think that African states, and in this case Uganda, do you think the structural adjustment programs that we quickly jumped onto was a wrong decision for us as a country, and it opened the floodgates for unending borrowing? So if we were to go back in time, should we have said no to structural adjustment programs?
Okay. One thing, if you are a child and you're hungry and they give you food, you will not refuse food and die just because you think you're a child and maybe that person should not give you food. So similarly, in the 19s, yes, that was the time the economy was very low, and we needed to grow. And you realized that then the infrastructure was so bad, everything was mess, and the only solution we had then was to borrow. Because you realize those colonialists, yes, they were more advanced and industrialized than we are. And sometimes I feel it was good for us to pick a leaf from them. If we needed to get there, then we should consult from those who have been there. And if you realize that the issue then was finances, then borrowing was okay. But however much there are those strings attached, like my brother here said, you realize that you find maybe they're saying to give you this, we are wavering your immunity, or we are wavering this and that, which in the long run hits you back. So I feel there is need still to, however much you are borrowing, let us negotiate on the terms and the conditions and make sure they are not affecting us so bad and so much in the long run. If you say, for example, you're giving us this money and you realize that if maybe we do not pay back, but also attaching ourselves to a lot of, terms encourages us to work hard. Just imagine you said, if you borrow us this money, then all the hospitals in Uganda shall belong to us in case you do not pay. Or maybe that all the Entebbe will belong to us and everything will belong to everyone, to them. So it encourages you in the long run to work hard and ensure that this is like betting. Ensure that you pay back what you have borrowed. Yes. So however much those days the coming in of the borrowing, I feel it was a good take for the start because we had no option. We had no alternative. We had no industries.
But do you think have we gotten trapped into that?
Yes,
very
we have
good.
gotten trapped.
We are trapped.
We are trapped.
Okay, Isaac, we are trapped into this whole borrowing thing. But still, I had to examine perhaps the implication that borrowing has on domestic enterprise. Because, okay, and borrowing, aid, and donations in general. Because I want you to imagine, hypothetically, that, for example, UK aid or US aid gives us mosquito nets and says, oh, you guys are grappling with malaria, have these mosquito nets for free. Think about the local producer of mosquito nets who has been put out of business because there is some donation coming in from elsewhere. That government that would have procured these nets domestically from Otuku, from Kwania, now has nets for free. So do you think that borrowing, donations, aid, grants, one way or another, frustrates domestic enterprise? Is there a correlation?
No. I want to look at it in a way. If I'm borrowing money, I can borrow money and boost production of Otuku to produce the nets and will supply to government. Okay, I can borrow money, tell Otuku, you know what, I'll go in a contract, supply us with 5 million nets. To produce this, you shall supply us maybe at the cost of this. So from that cost, you know, you will have increased production capacity of Otuku from Kwania. You will be able to employ more people and also pay more taxes to you because of the production, like the VAT and other taxes. And also the people are going to be employed. Maybe also pay some what they call pay as you earn. That would be okay. But when someone is donating to you the nets already, automatically the producer in the country will have to bear the consequence, will have to suffer. Just like we had recently where was it Kasita? It was Uma, I think Uma. Were complaining that the Chinese goods, which are cheaper, were frustrating production in Uganda. Because you find that the cost of producing, let me say, a product, let me say a shirt in Uganda, at the end cost, it will cost you 50,000. But the Chinese one will come, putting in the cost is also at 35,000. And as a consumer, basically, I always go for the cheapest option where I save money in such a way that you find our domestic producers will be knocked out of production. So if the borrowing is in form of cash which can boost the economy, that's okay. Or the aid in form of cash. But if it is coming in form of a product which can be produced from the country, then I would think that should be, I think, the red line we should not be crossing. Just like you should remember, was it the Minister for Refugees, Engineer Hilary, when he had an issue with was it UNHCR? Food for refugees have to be imported from outside to feed refugees who are being accommodated in Uganda. And the excuse was the food of Uganda is poor quality. For refugees, by the way. Not saying but for refugees. I'm sorry because I will say this because these are people who have come into the country to seek for, I can call it shelter and some safety. And you said the food which the people who have been here safe for all this time they're eating, including you yourself. You said it's not safe for them. So such a thing, I would think borrowing or donations in form of monetary terms, I would support it compared to that which is coming in terms of the fine of the product. Then I want to just highlight something. You talked about the SAPs, the structure adjustment programs, which were introduced, which were imposed on the government. We have just talked about, you had made a comment of, is it the medical interns arm twisting the government, or the guys arm twisting medical interns? In that situation, during that period, the world powers arm twisted the government into accepting to the SAPs. We used to have government participating in production. Let me tell you, there's no government which has moved from one level to another when it has abandoned production totally in the hands of capitalists. The government does not participate in production most times suffers what we are suffering. We had the government which was participating in production. We had the marketing board, the coffee marketing board, the lean marketing board. I think there was also a lot of cooperatives. Government would do business and make money for itself. But when the world powers, which we would say world powers, came and arm twisted government into accepting the SAPs, it all led to what we are. And I would want to think it was deliberate, because it's very hard to control a rich person. You all know that. Someone who has his money, you cannot control him. But someone who is poor and begging from you can always tell them what to do. And that is what the world powers wanted, to put Uganda and mainly African countries in a situation where they can tell them, you know what, jump, and they'll say how high, not asking you why we are jumping. So all we have gotten into was because of the era which we did not foresee in the 1990s.
Wow. Wangusa, speaking of errors, how can we rectify the error of limited domestic resource mobilization? Because we can speak all the English that we want, but for as long as we don't begin to generate resources domestically, we cannot finance our development. We then have to go to World Bank, IMF, Russia, African Development Bank, and China Exim Bank, and all these banks to give us money. So how can we generate more domestic resources? Is it about for example, how do we widen the tax base? How? Do we have to increase taxes, for example? Do we have to control illicit financing? So how can we go forward as a country in terms of realizing more domestic resource that we can finance our development? How can we go about it?
All right. Of course, we need to redirect our efforts.
Or is it about controlling public expenditure, the cost of administration, the cost of running government? All these government officials with 2-3 cars, lead car, what? Yeah? The cost of running public offices, is it too high, for example, that we need to cut it down? Yeah. So how can we move forward, basically?
In fact, that's where I was coming to. Before we say we could maybe increase taxes, maybe increase the tax to widen the tax base, would cut government expenditure, especially unnecessary government expenditure. But then when I'm talking about cutting unnecessary government expenditure, don't quote me wrong and say we are going to cut the expenditure of each and every sector. For instance, we cannot cut the expenditure in the health sector. That is something that is very pertinent, and we cannot go into that. But look at the salaries of some government officials, even our legislature, for the matter of fact. Why would somebody have an allowance of 30 million plus just for a month, and yet they can do that, even past their allowances, communication allowances, transport allowances, everything. They also have these cars they are given, these personal privilege that they are always given. So why would somebody be in position to have a convoy?
And the speaker's car cost 1.2 billion?
Yeah.
Okay.
So why would we go into that? Of recent, we saw government officials themselves, even the state, sponsoring state funerals, 200 million or just 200 million, just a funeral for somebody. So all this unnecessary government spending would first of all look at it and cut it. Now we are not only cutting it, but we should also be in position to redirect it to where, to almost, of course, to these domestic resources or reservoirs here. Now the only way as to why you have to take it there is simply because you're doing it in one way of empowering this person that is here, leave alone the tax holder that we always give to these rich investors. I always ask myself, why would we be in position to give a tax holiday to a Kidega that has a net worth of more than $1 trillion? And then you cannot give a tax holiday to somebody who's just having a project or maybe just a business that is worth 500,000. That would be simply call maybe for, we are somehow myopic. Somebody is capable of paying the tax, but then you're giving them a tax holiday. There's a big gap there where we are lacking. And then, of course, we should also be in position to see, to account for the, of course, the resources that we have. If the taxes that are there, for instance, all I know is that around June, we were told that and whoever uses Entebbe Express Highway or at the end of a financial year will collect a 13.6 billion. So now, collecting 13.6 billion, it even being named the most expensive loan in the world, where does that go at the end of the day? Is it going to finance? Because at each and every step we see, we are going in for borrowing. We are going in for borrowing. So at the end of the day, why do we borrow instead of even localizing? I mean, as in empowering our localized small businesses, our localized domestic resources. So would be so much keen, or would be so much concerned with the domestic resources that we have to empower the people that are there, to empower ourselves. For instance, that you were talking about the UK and US, you said if they were giving us these free donations, but then they are frustrating a local businessman. So what does it call into us? Does it simply mean that we just have to sit back and see, oh, at least we should come into play and then at least have these things discussed, and at the end of the day, I think the best way we could empower these domestic resources or utilize them is to cut unnecessary government spending. We're not going to cut each and every spending, but there is some unnecessary, quote me right, such that in the unnecessary spending, if you're looking at it, we could reduce. The MP doesn't need a car. From the allowance that they have, they can have, they can buy their own cars. We have cheap cars that can even go for as low as 18 million, 20 million, and they drive, or they even also perhaps consume the same fuel that the 200 billion car does consume. But then there's always a big question there. Why don't you give them these cars, but you have to give them the money to go and buy the cars or procure the cars?
Wow, amazing conversations. Yes, Lynn, let me just come back to you, and I'll just try to go back to the law a little bit. Anytime from now, the Constitutional Court shall be hearing the petition that is going to be filed or has been filed by these honorable members of Parliament. Well, we expect justice to take its course, like Isaac said, that the law will take its course. But also, let me just remind us that the Constitutional Court in 2001 had a landmark decision in the case of Paul Kawanga Semogere versus the Attorney General, where it reversed the procedure through which Parliament had passed the Referendum Act. So it means that the court has capacity to overturn a Parliament decision for as long as it is authorized, it is outside the law. So, but also I know that courts, before taking a decision, they examine the implications of that decision. Now, as we speak right now, perhaps Standard Chartered has already given us the money. Yeah? So should the court decision come and say, no, Parliament passed this budget, so it passed this loan approval in an unconstitutional manner, but the money has already been borrowed and it's already in use. So do you think we could find ourselves possibly between a rock and a hard place? Should court say that the process was unconstitutional and therefore it should be reversed, but the money is already with us and it is being used?
Okay, before I get to that, I would like to tackle
that kind of situation.
something you said. I said that the Ministry of Health, when I was talking about where we can cut off in ministries and where it is pertinent that we actually cannot do that. I would like to tell you that even if it is Ministry of Health, you realize that Ministry of Health will not work without Ministry of Agriculture, because those patients will need food. And it will not work without connection to the Ministry of ICT and technology, because they would need those machines in hospitals. So the way is not that only Ministry of Health should be put into consideration as an overview of everything, or as a spearhead of everything, that without it we cannot survive, but all ministries should be put under the same umbrella and, worked on appropriately so that they run concurrently with each other. And then back to you, Kidega. I feel that if those people are challenging procedure and already the money is into circulation, then what next? Who is going to pay back? Are they going to say, if, for example, you're saying you've already used it for the road, are you going to say no? Are we going to go back and borrow more from some other place, use the right procedure? Are we going to take it back? A lot of questions there. But to me, I feel, first of all, these same people that have petitioned, if results come out and they're not in their favor, you realize these people always want to say, courts of, they themselves take up the first step and bring up the petitions with a hope for the right decisions to be come up with. But even when the right decisions are come up with and they're not in their favor, do they still think it is the right decisions that have been taken into account? Or they still feel that there is no separation of arms of government? They still feel like there is that interference of the president or the executive with the judiciary, or the judiciary with the parliament. To me, I feel that whichever decision comes up, if the decision is procedure was wrong, I feel, of course, the money cannot be taken back because it has already been used. It has already been used.
The law doesn't work in retrospective.
Yes, maybe if they would say that, maybe next time this and this can be done, it can take precedent that next time this should be done this way, not the other way. But the fact that if maybe money is already in circulation, where are we going to get it from? Because this is borrowed money, we are borrowing because we didn't have. And how are we going to take it back when we've already used it? And we've already agreed to their terms and conditions.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
So, colleagues, let's just wrap this up. Then we move to the next gear. Gear 3.
Disclaimer.
Yes, you will give it as you give us your last words regarding the 1.7 trillion loan that you have just borrowed. Yes, Isaac, Wangusa, and you just wrap this up, then we shift to gear 3. Those who drive manual cars, you know what I'm talking about. Yes, Isaac.
So, about the loan, if that money can be used to boost the economy, that will be a plus for the country, because we are facing a situation, an economic situation, an inflation in Uganda, which is not because of excess money in circulation, but because of scarcity. Because inflation, there are many types of inflation. There's where you have excess money in circulation, purchasing the few goods which are there, so it becomes expensive. But right now, we don't have excess money in circulation, but we have scarcity of goods to be purchased. So, if this money can come and boost maybe production, boost the economy somehow, trust me, it will somehow be of a relief to most of the citizens. And somehow, somewhere, out of this economy which has been boosted, government can raise its tax revenue and pay back. Yes.
Yes, Wangusa.
All right, I would want to start with a disclaimer that I said we should focus so much on to cutting government unnecessary government expenditure. And I was giving an example that take, for instance, it would be very difficult for us, it would beat anyone's understanding for us to cut maybe like the expenditure in the health sector. So what happens if you're now saying that since the health sector has, even the one that we have that is shrinking, or the one that is not that good, if you said maybe we are just removing maybe like 1 billion or 1 trillion, at the end of it, that simply means even the operational, the non-wage recurring should be made. So that simply means it is very difficult for us to cut any expenditure that is in need or that is of high necessity to us. That is the disclaimer I would want to begin with. But then also, when it comes to the issue of borrowing, the first question that should come into one's mind would be, why are we borrowing? And what is this loan that we are borrowing going to benefit us? Is it just to increase our debt burden, or it is to increase maybe our hopes of paying by simply maybe increasing our costs of production, or maybe our costs of investment, our best where are we investing, and what are our future prospects at the end of the day. By the time we are only borrowing just to meet the immediate demands of the nation, then it simply loses meaning. Simply means that in the long run, you're going out to again ask yourself questions like, why had I bought this loan, yet I was not in the best position to pay it back? So I think we need to revise our fiscal policy and see how best we have to borrow. At a time even where we have maybe some members of parliament, some part of the legislature going into the courts of law. Maybe to challenge it in one way or the other is, opposition's role is not to oppose, it is to advise the government. I think you're only looking at what happens maybe in a few realities, that every now and then we see some hardcore radical opposition figures trying to perhaps blindfold, or maybe trying to perhaps tarnish each and every good thing or bad thing that the government has done. But the ideal bit of it is that opposition is there to advise, although it is always done, or it is always appreciated by a few, if not a handful, of the opposition political figures. Thank you.
Lynn, your last
Yes,
words on this topic.
Okay. I think the 1.5 trillion that is borrowed is specifically allocated to development of infrastructure. If we are to get back to the cause of why it has been borrowed, it has not been borrowed maybe to pay salaries, maybe to do what, but specifically to do infrastructure. And what is infrastructure, or how best is infrastructure helping us as Uganda? You realize that once you develop roads, once you develop schools, once you develop roads mainly, that is industrialization. Economic activities are going to be so easy because there is faster transportation of goods, there's faster transportation maybe of seedlings if you're going to do agriculture, and there is faster transportation of goods to the market. There is faster and faster transportation of any raw materials to wherever you're taking it. So we look at it in the long-term aspect of it being beneficial to Ugandans. If we are developing roads and they are helping us in a lot of aspects, then why not go for it? Why not us take up the borrowing and help Ugandans? Because even when you're going to the hospital, you need those roads. And that's development. Even when you're going to the industry, you need those roads. Kidega, when you're going to work and you're late, you need to get fast to your workplace. Even when you're going to the bank to get money, you need those good roads. So we need, to me, I feel that the need for borrowing, specifically for this, as long as it is going, because government tries its best to, once money is borrowed and it is borrowed for that specific quality or that work, then it grows there. However much there are few challenges, and those challenges cannot totally be put on government. These are people, these are Ugandans themselves who are in work, and some of them swindle the money. And these people maybe could be our parents, could be our relatives, they could be anyone in society. So it is not necessarily the mantle of the government that maybe the money is being misused, but we as Ugandans also have a role to play because we succumb to that money and we swindle that money. And we are not supposed to do that. We're supposed to make sure that the money is used for the right thing, because development of a country is not entirely on the government, but it is entirely upon us as Ugandans. And there is a statement President Musa initially says that if we all worked together, if everyone had something to contribute, then we would develop. But usually most of us want to say, we want to sit and wait for what the government has to offer.
Yeah. Play a role as a citizen.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have to shift gears. 1 second.
Does that simply mean that in the current budget, infrastructure was not catered for, or even the supplementary budget? I think
Good question. Good question. Food for thought. Yes. Yeah. Let's just advance gears. Today, like I said, it's a marathon. 3 topics. Now, first and foremost, the government in Kinshasa has been accusing the government in Kigali of supporting the M23 rebels that has been causing a lot of havoc in Goma. No, it has in fact captured Goma totally. Now, as of last week, yes, the government of Kinshasa did expel the Rwandan ambassador, okay, because of the same allegations. Just a few days ago, we saw a statement from the Rwandan government saying that the DRC jet fighter had violated the Rwandan airspace. So let's just examine this conflict in DRC Congo, but how it is playing out in the entire region. Otuku, let me just begin with you. The allegations that Uganda and Rwanda are in fact behind M23 rebels. How does this allegation come to you as a young Ugandan? Is it a fair allegation?
First, let us examine, does Uganda, if you look at M23, their genesis, was it in 2015 when they were chased and ran to Uganda?
2011.
2011.
Yes. When SADC forces of Tanzania, Angola, South Africa intervened and
they ran into Uganda. But okay, let's not take that direction. But what I would want to say is, if you have to look at M23, the kind of weapons they are using, and I look at the states which are being accused of supporting this, can we call them rebels? Rebels.
Yes, they are rebels.
For now, they are rebels. The kind of machines they are using, the kind of artillery they are using, does Uganda and Rwanda, Uganda with its problems of ADF, do they have the capacity to first, again, instead of focusing on the ADF, start funding almost a whole military unit, a rebel unit, to start to wage that kind of war against the state? I would think they're just trying to play diversionary tactics. You see, the area of Congo where the fighting is taking place is a mineral-rich region, and very many actors are there. Because I'm told in that the eastern DRC Congo, there are over 20 rebel groups.
That's true.
Operating. Each rebel group gets its stronghold, operates there like a government on its own.
That's true.
And all these rebel groups are operating using guns which are being supplied by some some manufacturer somewhere.
Who?
So if you are to look at these rebels, I don't want to look at start accusing Rwanda, Uganda against Congo. No, I want to put it. The blame comes back to the foreign powers in play here. We have a lot of foreign influence trying to have control over the resources in eastern DRC Congo, and they will try all means possible to ensure that there is no stability in that area, so that the illegal mining and exploitation takes place. We have had the UN state mission in Congo for, I think, now over 20 years. But ask yourself, in the time they have been there, with the amount of money being spent there, what have they done? You'll find that impact from the time of the inception up to now, at least more rebel groups have instead increased instead of reducing. So let us not look at these small accusations of Uganda, Rwanda against DRC and what. This thing is bigger than these three states.
Okay.
This is a battle for international bodies. I mean, they can call them maybe the international mafias, trying to have control of the eastern DRC minerals, and they'll use all methods to ensure they have that control.
Lynn,
Yes.
let me just come to you. Isaac thinks that these are mere allegations, but we have seen the International Court of Justice say that Uganda was, in fact, a couple of years ago, part of the plundering of gold and timber in DRC Congo. And there was evidence adduced to that effect. And even the individuals that were part of this were mentioned in that report. So, when DRC begins to accuse Uganda of supporting M23 rebels, does our history in any way vindicators or castigators? Because our history shows that we have participated in the plundering of resources of Congo. Not so long ago, the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, did levy on us a fine that we have to pay back to Congo. So the allegations of Uganda funding M23 rebels, are there some bits of truth to it, or these are mere hearsay and are falsehoods meant to tarnish the name of Uganda?
Like you said, allegations there are still allegations until there is some evidence put on table to say, see, this is it, just like similarly they did before, and brought the evidence on table. So personally, I would say it is hearsay until there is evidence to show that this is it, but not alluding from the prior or whatever happened before, because this is a completely new, different case of where you're accusing Uganda for supporting the rebels in your country. And then, of course, with those rebels, you realize that, like you said, the minerals, the interests are far much beyond and greater than what a human being could say. And those colonialists, or the whites, or whoever is but non-Africans, they always have interest in such cases. That is why you find you're having issues with the oil here. That is why you find there are issues with minerals. That is why you find there are issues with maybe some industries or everywhere that there is oil and stuff. So if they feel that there is a need for them to have this, then they will surely do what it takes. And they could masquerade around, and then you're put into the same ball, and you're put as part of their plan, or on the look of it, everyone, because they know Uganda of recent, this and this has happened. So if they do that, what will come to the eyes of the public, or what would Kidega think? Because Uganda has played a role before in this, then there are chances definitely that Uganda could be fueling or could be behind the moves in those places. But another thing I would add on for the case of Rwanda, I feel this is East Africa, and we need to get back to the drawing board. We need to get back as a family and realize or support each other. If you are saying you are a family as East Africa, but then, and these issues you're accusing for just airspace. Yes, there is that nuisance of airspace, but for heaven's sake.
Is it nuisance? Council? Because you know that airspace is in fact a country's jurisdiction.
Trespass, yes. But I feel they should actually, there are some issues that can be harmonized between
diplomatically.
them. Yes, because this was the Ugandans in DRC, and similarly there are Rwandese in DRC. And those are the same people that are losing their lives in such scenarios. And to take it back to the principle, one of the principles of humanitarian law, international humanitarian law, is that we should not have attacks on hospitals and health centers. And if that happens, then there's a violation of a right. And all this is happening in DRC Congo. Nurses are dying, people are dying, and you find even other people refugees are coming into Uganda, and you don't know who actually comes in. You don't know who fuels what. So there is still a bit more to sit down and harmonize.
There's so much gray area.
Yes, everyone should play a role.
Thank you. Wangusa, let me just come to you as we just try to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we don't have much time. Just two things. If you look at the kilometers from Kampala to Goma, then you compare the kilometers from Kigali to Goma vis-a-vis the kilometers from Goma to Kinshasa. Goma is much more closer to Uganda and Rwanda than it is to Kinshasa. So perhaps Uganda and Rwanda's intervention could be right, because the conflict area is much more closer to them. And even if they were intervening in terms of deployment of, for example, Operation Shuja, perhaps we have legitimate reason, because DRC is just at our border. So do you think that Uganda carries a legitimate claim to have vehement interest in the pacification of the eastern part of DRC and also Rwanda? Because you know, Rwanda, the Nyamwasa people are actually Rwandese. Okay? The M23 rebels is largely dominated by the Nyamwasa people who came from Rwanda. So, I don't know. Do these two countries have legitimate claim to actually have interest in pacification?
I think a quick one. Of course, they have the legitimacy for only one simple reason. Since they are that, of course, the space is as near as maybe better than the space between Goma and Kinshasa. We are supposed to be cognizant of how best we protect our borders. So, at the time where we don't protect our borders, irrespective of the insecurities maybe there in Goma, we should also not sit back just because maybe there were allegations or there were cases levied against us, of which they were proven right, and then you sit back and watch the space. No, irrespective of us having maybe taken part in the timber and whatever plundering, but we still have to come back into play and protect our border, as well as, because we have had also rebel groups in Uganda, and of course some are still existing. So it shouldn't be a chance to give us, or it shouldn't be space to give us just a comfort zone to sit and watch, but to rather provoke us into, of course, going and protecting our borders. So I would be in position to say we have the legitimacy over our claim that you have to protect our borders.
Yeah.
Let me
Just, yes.
let me just say something.
I have a question for you. So, just as we wrap it up,
Yes.
you will have a chance to make that comment. Our president, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has of recent attained the new stature, father of the region, and this was given to him by another sovereign president. Does this new stature place a bigger responsibility on Uganda to offer leadership in terms of seeing that DRC Congo is pacified and is stable?
Okay. I just want to comment about the issue of legitimacy, having the legitimate claim to go and maybe in course to specify a region next in another state because it is next to yours. I don't think that we should take that direction because we have our brothers in Karamoja where they have the cattle rustling close to Kenya, maybe causing havoc in Kenya. I don't think Kenya will start saying, you know what, since this is part close to our border, let us go there. We had Konyi rebels in northern Uganda, it was close to Sudan border at that time. I did not see Sudan come and say, since it is next to our border, we should go there. So, being close to Goma, or Rwanda being close to Goma, if that claim allegation was to be true, that should never be a reason for them to go and maybe cause havoc or in a pretense of pacifying a region because it is close to you. I don't think we should encourage such a kind of of direction. Now, our president was named the father of the region. Being a father comes with a lot of responsibilities. When you take it back to a family, at a family level, when siblings, if you're a father and you see your children having fights and maybe so and so has beaten the other friend, it is upon you to call the two people and put them bring peace amongst them. So, our president being given that title, father of the region, I think it comes more responsibilities than just the privilege you would maybe have thought of being the father would come with. And I think this is the best time he should prove to the nation and the region that, you know what, I'm the father of this region. Because you'll find that all these East African presidents is the longest serving of all. So he has been in power for so long, he can just use the experience he has used to make pacify Uganda and borrow a leaf, or we can give them the full. We always say you can borrow the entire tree to DRC. So that they find a lasting solution to their peace, to their insecurity issues. Because an insecure neighbor, we shall not have peace when DRC, especially the eastern part, is insecure.
That's true. Wangusa, I want to ask you just to use 1 minute to respond to this because it's a very important concern that I would love you to address. The issue of deployment of the troops. Rwanda has been asked not to deploy troops. Of course, I mean the East African Joint Forces that are going to be deployed in DRC. Rwanda has been asked not to deploy. Uganda has been asked not to deploy. Burundi as well, because of their allegations. So the only countries in the EAC that have legitimate mandate to deploy is Kenya and South Sudan. South Sudan, where I'm not sure they have a national army assembled as yet. I am not sure. So perhaps they would have nothing to deploy. So it is only Kenya that is now deploying troops. Is this
Tanzania.
deployment? Yeah.
And Tanzania.
No, Tanzania has reservations. They have held back up to now. So is this standby force sufficient to address the issue? Just use 1 minute, please.
All right. In my opinion, it is not sufficient enough to address the issue. For only one simple reason, even when the UN came in, the UN mission came in, and very many people who were pledging maybe assistance came in to pray, we saw rather the number of the rebel groups increasing in that particular area. So it wouldn't only be bad to maybe to ask the only deployment from the KDF to maybe take shape, but would rather, as we are moving to the EAC agenda, work or be able to unite and work as one family. Yeah.
Speaking of the EAC agenda, just use a minute like he has done. Is the EAC taking the right approach towards integration? We are focusing more on the quantity than the quality. Now we're in talks with having, I think, Somalia join. Is it Somalia or Ethiopia?
Somalia.
Yeah, I think
Somalia
to join a country that Mogadishu has had, I don't know, Afghanistan for I don't know how long, but we are discussing with them for them to join the bloc. Are we taking the right approach towards the East African Federation? Because even Congo just joined us of recent, but they came now with all this, and yes, there are bigger advantages of the population. 90 million people joining the bloc is a big one, but also the instability that they come with. So, is the EAC taking the right direction? Just 1 minute, and
I think first
we
of
say
all,
bye to our viewers.
the ES needs to first harmonize the countries that they have, because it is if you're failing from the start and then you want to claim that you're bringing in more people, it doesn't make sense. It is seeming to be that the more people you're bringing in, the more conflicts actually are coming up, than the more solutions and resolutions that you need and you're aiming at. So I feel there is need for them to first have a stable management way forward of the little of the less countries that they still are, and then see on how best they can widen their capacity in terms of structure and everything. Otherwise, they cannot, if they are to keep bringing on board, but they're not having resolutions, tangible ones, then it does really not make sense.
Wow, thank you. Colleagues, I'll give you 10 seconds each. Just say bye to the viewers. Lynn, I will begin with you as I move towards Isaac.
Okay.
Your last words, really.
All right. It has been a nice show, and I believe that the focus of this is to always, give out our views and get back to know what you actually think and how best you can help ourselves as society and community. So make sure that you pick a leaf or two and see how best you can also develop Uganda, and you should know your role to play as a citizen. Thank you very much.
Yes, Wangusa.
All right. Viewers, it's been good interacting with you in this very fundamental and constructive engagement. I believe I would want to thank all the moderators and the panelists here with me that have done justice and help in this discussion. But we are looking forward to more engagements, and of course we also appreciate Civic Space TV always giving us this mandate or this platform and Center for Constitutional Governance. We believe with this platform we could perhaps extend our voices or occupy space to see how best we can have our voices heard, and we also how best we can better our country. Responsibility is a personal, is an individual law that everybody has got to play. Till we meet again, love you all. Bye-bye.
Yes, Isaac.
Yes, to the viewers, my only word was that let us have the hope, because the hope which will keep us moving, and let's love our country, because it's the only country we have. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, comrades. Comrade Isaac, Comrade Wangusa, and Comrade Lynn for spending the time to be on the Youth Roundtable. Of course, to the technical team, thank you for ensuring that our viewers get this show right on time at 2 p.m. Well, I can't add much more to this conversation. You've heard it all. Only encourage you to subscribe to this channel, but above all, give us your views, give us your comments. Until next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye. Thank you.